All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. And Council, I propose to move now to item number 6 out of consideration for the Trafford Crescent residents who may be here anxiously awaiting, they are here, anxiously awaiting the fate of their item. And if I don't see an objection, that's where we're going. Councillor Robinson?
Your Worship, yes, I could speak to that. I've talked to the residents. They've read the report. They're happy and satisfied with it, and none of them want to speak to us this evening, so I would move approval.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you for not applauding. It's technically against our rules. All right, Council will resume the agenda as published, and because I wish to speak to item number 4, I'd like to pass the chair to Acting Mayor Duddick.
Thank you. We are now on item number 4, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, I'm the chair, yeah. Are we getting a presentation from staff? I do believe we are.
Thank you, members of council. I'm pleased this evening to present the update to the Heritage Planning 3-year work plan. As I've mentioned in the past, the plan reflects input from Heritage Planning staff and also your Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee. The photos on the front slide actually represent some of the initiatives that we're very pleased with that were either in progress now or to come. The first 2 buildings at the top took advantage of the Heritage Grant Program in 2014 to receive some grant money for repairs to the stucco on the left and also the front porch on the right. And the bottom photo is the streetscape of 1st and 2nd Street. I think that's 1st Street. And that is an initiative that's we have initiated this year, and we hope to, or last year, and we hope to complete this year. So my presentation this evening will be very brief. It'll focus on the 3 topic areas that are in the second slide, and that is the areas of focus in our work plan. We'll touch briefly on the 2014 accomplishments, and we'll look ahead to 2015 to 17 initiatives with a focus on our 2015 priorities. I believe the clerk has provided you with a lovely colored version of Appendix A. I hope that you have that in front of you. And that will be beneficial when we move through the presentation. So the areas of focus again are in 4 areas: identifying and protecting heritage resources. That's what I refer to as the day-to-day work that the heritage planning staff do related to permit review, dealing with demolition requests and proactive designations. That's the turning of the crank, and it does take a lot of staff time. And in fact, I noted to the Heritage Oakville Committee this year the number of permits has continued to rise in the 4 years that I've been with the town, and we're up close to 70 to 80 per year. The second area is streamlining policy and procedures. A couple of recent examples that were successes in the past would be the heritage delegation to staff, which has been great, and our street naming protocols, which now include heritage input. Undertaking studies and reports related to heritage is the third focus area. Those are the bigger projects that typically require funding support through capital from yourself as council, and a recent example would be the Downtown Heritage Conservation District, which was a success several years ago. And lastly, promoting heritage conservation through outreach and education is the fourth focus area. Things that we do in there would be support for Doors Open, some of our real estate seminars that we have had in the past. That was another one that was a success in 2014, and also the Heritage Awards. We put a lot of work into the Heritage Awards as well. So very quickly, our 2014 accomplishments, the 4 that I've highlighted on the first slide, I would say are the ones that we really are taking pride in, and that's the implementation of the Heritage Grant Program. The first year was 2014. We had a lot of interest to try to divvy up the $80,000 that Council has endorsed, and we're seeing similar interest in our 2015 program as well. Early in the year, Council endorsed the Cultural Heritage Landscape Strategy. We will be moving forward on that in future years, and I believe the mayor would like to speak to that tonight, and I'm certainly open to ideas or where we should be heading. Initiating the update to the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District, I mentioned that started in the fall of last year with the retention of a consulting firm to assist, and much of the grunt work with that will be in the first 6 months of this year, and we hope to present that to council early in the fall. And very proud of the designations that council has endorsed related to the Oakville Arena and the Metro Marine. So those were 2 projects that we were exceedingly proud of. Other accomplishments included the real estate seminar I mentioned. Well received, both the one we did in 2012 and also in 2014. Heritage inspections, we've streamlined that process internally and made it a factor in all of the processes that we do to ensure that inspections are done. And there were also support for other planning initiatives for others, the Downtown Streetscape and Cultural Hub, which will be brought forward, I believe, in the next month or so. The Oakville Arena redevelopment, which is ongoing, and the Burnhamthorpe Road Character Study, which will actually be presented next. And that's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes from your heritage planning staff, supporting those other projects. So moving ahead to 2015 to 17, I'm not going to go into detail on this colorful spreadsheet. Just to point out again, as we've done in past years, the completed projects are in green, the ongoing projects are highlighted in blue, and where you see yellow highlight, those are either new initiatives or updates to the timing or status. So if council has any questions on any of those and why they've landed in certain years, I can certainly go into that. Our 2015 priorities, again, is to complete the update to the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation, the continued implementation of the Heritage Grant Program. Again, this is the 2nd year of that program. As you remember, it's a 3-year pilot, so next year will be the final year, and then we will be reporting back to council on whether we should continue that as an ongoing initiative. As part of that, we hope to update the designation guide, which references the importance of heritage conservation, and will include in that information on the grant program. We'll be looking for other outreach opportunities through your Livable Oakville update. There's been a lot of outreach that's already occurred, but some of the next steps are to go into the schools and talk to the children about the importance of planning, and we hope to partner with that to talk about the importance of heritage planning. And we want to resurrect the plaque program as well this year. So again, I'm open to any question you might have, but I'm hoping that council will endorse this resolution tonight and receive our work plan.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Are there any questions for staff before I look to the mayor for his input? Okay, seeing that, Your Worship, I believe this is the time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We on council are very, very proud of our heritage planners and the work that you do. And we place a lot of importance on what you do. And you mentioned our joint interest in cultural heritage landscapes. They are a defining element of our town, and the recently completed cultural heritage landscape strategy brought us a greater understanding of our ability to protect in that area. We've already protected our waterfront and valleys, which are identified as our natural system, and the report notes that further work on our harbors needs to be done. However, we have many other major open space areas which are key to defining the landscape of Oakville. And given the size of your existing heritage program, I have to assume that internal resources are already at their limit, and accordingly, if this cultural heritage landscape work can't be completed in 2015, we need a report to the Budget Committee on funding required to complete this review in 2015. And so, Council, I would ask you to move the staff recommendation with an addendum, with a second piece that would say, we request staff to undertake a review of the town's major open space areas in order to determine if they should be appropriately designated as a cultural heritage landscape. And further, if the work cannot be completed in 2015, staff are requested to report to the Budget Committee on the required resources to complete this study in 2015.
Okay, having heard, are there any questions of that addition to the motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Elgar. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I will pass the gavel back to your worship.
Chair. Ah.
On a point of order, I actually, it was the mayor, I think, since the mayor had passed the chair to you, it should actually be moved by our mayor.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I'm just happy that we got her done.
Okay.
Maybe we could put that in the minutes, that it's the mayor.
The clerk is empowered to make these corrections.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to number 5, the Burnhamthorpe Road Character and Environmental Assessment Study. And Lynn, we're ready.
Good. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and members of the public. My name is Lynn Rogers, a transportation engineer in the Engineering Construction Department and the project lead for the Burnhamthorpe Road Character Road and Class Environmental Assessment Study. I am here this evening to present to you the study process and recommendations for your consideration. This study was led by the Community Development Commission, which included engineering construction, development services, and planning services. Technical support was provided throughout this study by our consultants, MMM Group. On the screen before you is an overview of our presentation today. I'll begin with some background information, discuss public engagement, review the alternative designs, and also the evaluation process. And then I will outline the preferred design. Lastly, I will outline the next steps of the study. The process to determine and implement Burnhamthorpe Road is a long-term process. It has been broken down into 4 phases, which is before you. The first phase is the North Oakville Secondary Plan, whereby Burnhamthorpe Road is described as a character road. And with the construction of the future William Halton Parkway, which has been referred to in the past as the new North Oakville Transportation Corridor, Burnhamthorpe Road is set to replace, William Halton Parkway, which is set to replace the existing Burnhamthorpe Road regional road function. The second phase of the study is this study here, the Character Road Study, which is described in the North Oakville Secondary Plan to develop the road design, including the right-of-way width and facilities within the right-of-way. The third phase, after the approved character, if Council so wishes to approve the Character Road Study, includes various policy updates. These include road rationalization, given that Burnhamthorpe Road is currently a regional road, official plan updates to ensure that the right-of-way policies are consistent, and also financial policies to establish how we're going to fund this roadway. The last phase is implementation, which includes property acquisition, detail, design, and finally construction. As I mentioned, the existing Burnhamthorpe Road is a regional road. To accommodate growth in North Oakville, a new regional road, previously referred to as the new North Oakville Transportation Corridor, and now named William Halton Parkway, will be constructed by Halton Region, just north of the existing Burnhamthorpe Road, and will address future east-west travel demands in North Oakville. Additionally, improvements to Dundas Street from 4 to 6 lanes will be implemented to also address these travel demands. Once constructed and in service, William Halton Parkway will replace the regional road function, and the remaining portions of Burnhamthorpe, as identified in purple on the screen, will be transferred to the town and be designated a character road as described in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. Burnhamthorpe Road will retain its name, and this designation will promote it to transition to a vibrant and pedestrian-friendly street as development occurs along the corridor. Currently, there are several farms and rural residential properties along the roadway, with some commercial and some institutional facilities. The integrity of the current built form and cultural heritage landscape should be maintained or enhanced where possible, while ensuring that the development is accommodated and diverse modes of transportation are promoted. The implementation of the North Oakville's master plan will see that the development of a vibrant, compact community along this portion of corridor and a new road design is needed to support this approved transition. The future land use context, again, as approved through the secondary plan, is before you. It includes several land use contexts and is very diverse. The land uses along Burnham Thorpe Road range from the general urban, which is predominantly residential, to transitional areas, which essentially provide a interface or a buffer between the employment district and the residential land uses. An urban core land uses, which is primarily high density, and also employment, which is an employment area which include industrial and office development with some limited retail and service commercial. As I mentioned, the established new vision for areas north of Dundas include Burnham Thorpe Road as an urban community, one that is vibrant, pedestrian-friendly, and transit-supportive. The physical design of the road and its streetscape elements, as well as the built forms adjacent to it, defines the character of the roadway through visual experiences they create. The key to maintaining the authenticity of Burnham Thorpe corridor is ensuring that the new elements are distinct and definable, and where appropriate, sensitive to the existing character of the road. This study determines both the function and character of Burnham Thorpe Road as parcels along the corridor develop. The problems and opportunities detailed in this slide relate to Burnham Thorpe's future function and character, and are based on a review of existing conditions as well as the town of Oakville's vision and goals for the study corridor. As you see before you, the study itself looked at both function and character of the road. Again, what is the role of Burnham Thorpe? Who's going to use it, since there are several users within the right-of-way? And in terms of character, will it continue to be a rural cross-section, urban, or a combination? Will the sections along Burnham Thorpe, because of the several land uses along this corridor, be treated the same, or will there be a change? And also, is there a distinct or common element along the length of this corridor? The study began in 2013, and as you can see, several phases of the study were included. As part of that, there were several public engagement sessions throughout. One included the first public information session in early June to establish the context and problem opportunity, the second in April of 2014 to look at the alternatives, and finally today here at P&D Council. Other public engagement sessions include technical agencies, committees, and meetings, 2 stakeholder meetings with focus groups to discuss the problems and opportunities and also the preferred design, 2 public open houses, a project-specific website, and also social media alerts. Due to the varied land uses and densities expected along the Burnham Thorpe corridor, with the implementation of the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, 3 sections of this corridor were identified. First is to the west is the west section, which is primarily residential and low to medium density. Second is the core section, which is a high density and mixed use, which is along the Trafalgar Road corridor. And lastly, the medium density section, which you see here in the orange, which is a transitional section, which is, like I mentioned, medium density and mixed use. A distinct set of road design alternatives were established and developed for these sections to meet the unique needs. The west section is bounded by 16 Mile Creek to the west and William Halton Parkway to the east. In this section of the corridor, the land use designations primarily allow for low to medium density residential development with some mixed use along fronting Burnham Thorpe Road is encouraged, with allowable building heights that range from 2 to 5 stories. The cross-sections before you illustrate the alternative road designs that were considered for the west section and considered the land uses proposed for that. The alternatives aim to minimize environmental impact of the right-of-way while at the same time considering a range of on-street parking and active transportation options. As you see before you, there are both rural and urban cross-sections. The core sections is next and is defined by the Trafalgar Road Urban Core Land Use Designation within the North Oakville Secondary Plan. It extends east and west from the Burnham Thorpe Road intersection with Trafalgar Road and is expected to experience higher rates of urban development in this corridor. The designation allows for a range of land uses, including buildings up to 20 stories. These cross-sections for the core section illustrate alternative road designs that were considered for the core section. These alternatives reflect the need for an urban cross-section and provides an attractive pedestrian environment, while at the same time providing safe cycling facilities accommodating, higher volumes of traffic. The last section is the transitional section of the corridor and is located directly east and west of the core section. In the secondary plan, these sections are primarily designated transitional area and allow for a range of land uses. The density of the development is expected to be lower than that of the urban core, while still providing an urban and pedestrian-friendly environment. The cross-sections proposed for this transitional area were considered for its compatibility to the adjacent land uses and also with its compatibility to its proximity to the core section. Alternatives for this section ensure that the continuity is there for both pedestrians, cyclists, and also traffic facilities. At the first public information meeting, a set of draft evaluation criteria was presented. This was also refined through public consultation. The final evaluation criteria are organized into 7 categories, as shown on the screen or before you. They include operational, sustainable transportation, natural environment, urban design, socioeconomic, cultural environment, and also financial. Each of the alternative road designs for the west, core, and transitional sections were evaluated against these criteria to determine the preferred design. Discussions with members of the project team, technical agencies, and stakeholders also help refine the results of the evaluation and determined the categories that would be of most importance. The evaluation criteria identified this before you, which is the preliminary preferred alternative for the length of the Burnham Thorpe Road corridor. Specifically to the west, in the low to medium density area, alternative 4 was selected. This is an urban road design with wide boulevards, bump out parking, and also buffered bike lanes. This design is expected to promote active transportation and is expected to also support the small-scale commercial land uses, but also at the same time limiting the right-of-way to 22 meters to minimize any adverse environmental impacts. In the high-density area, also the high-density mixed-use area, the core section, alternative 1 was selected. This alternative also includes buffered bike lanes, wide boulevards, to create an inviting pedestrian environment and also to promote active forms of transportation. Off-peak parking is also available to provide flexibility in allowing for 4 lanes of traffic during peak hours. Lastly, in the medium-density area, the transitional section, alternative 2 is preferred. This cross-section includes bump-out parking lanes and will support adjacent commercial land uses, while the buffered bike lane is consistent along the corridor and is a configuration, again, to support active transportation throughout. In terms of the next steps for this study, if council wishes to approve the environmental study report, we will be moving forward with a public commenting period to end March 12, the 30-day period to end on March 12, 2015. And then the final environmental study report is to be completed by spring of 2015. As I mentioned, there is the long process in terms of implementing Burnham Thorpe Road. And so following that, there are some policy amendments to be made or policy updates, which include road rationalization including work with Halton Region. Also, the official plan updates to ensure that the right-of-way policies as recommended in the environmental study report are consistent with the official plan. This is proposed to be included as part of the official plan review. And lastly, the financial component proposed to begin in the fall of 2015, which is with the development charge bylaw update. I should note that the estimated cost of the project, which is widening and urbanization of of Burnham Thorpe Road between 16 Mile Creek and 9th Line, is estimated to be approximately $13.2 million. Elements of this plan is to be secured to the extent possible through development planning process, development charges, and also budget capital funds. Thank you for your time, and here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Councillor Elgar has a question.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. And you and I have talked about the proposal. I was wondering if you would be able to put up your recommendation, which you have redone, I believe, for everyone.
I can speak to an amendment based on our discussion.
Yes, please.
So my discussion with Councilor Elgar spoke to looking at the the active transportation facilities within this corridor and looking at enhancing it further to what is being proposed. And based on our discussion, we're looking to add a multi-use, in replace of the standard sidewalk, enhancing it to a multi-use path. So, which is the discussion that we had. So the proposed additional recommendation is that during the detailed design process, staff include a multi-use path in lieu of a standard sidewalk within the transitional areas along one side of the corridor.
Yes, one side. I'd like to thank you for that. Now, if maybe we can roll back just a little bit.
Sure.
I see a letter here from a lawyer stating that this new road is actually fragmenting the client's property. Could you maybe go back and show the road that you're talking about? I know what's happened here. They think it's the proposed redesignation of what's now called the William Halton Parkway, I think.
That's correct. So the property that is mentioned in that letter from Weirfolds is actually at 263 Burnham Thorpe Road West, which is, if I have my arrow correctly, is right in this area where the curvilinear section of William Halton Parkway is. So it actually it relates to the William Halton Parkway, the new North Oakville Transportation Corridor, and not the Burnham Thorpe Road corridor.
I appreciate that, because that may have, I think actually when I first read it, I thought it was the new William Parkway also when I first read what we were doing. We're just dealing with the existing Burnham Thorpe Road and how we're going to reconstruct it.
That's right, the remnant pieces as a result of William Halton Parkway being built.
Now, with regard to you threw out that small number, 13.2 million. Do we know what portion of that will be development charges and what portion we, the existing residents, will be contributing to? That
Not
number?
at this time. I mean, we are looking at development along this corridor. So we, like I mentioned, we are looking to see elements of this project, including property acquisition, construction, et cetera, through the development application process, as well as development charges and, if needed, the capital budget program. But at this time, the portions have not been determined as of yet.
Okay, so the next question is just for clarification. So what we will have going forward will be a fully dedicated bike lane for the cyclists that want to go straight through.
Correct.
And we will also have a shared sidewalk and bicycle lane, so the younger children can ride on that portion of which is a divided curb, right? Like there's no way cars will be around that area at all.
That's correct. So we will have 2 dedicated bicycle lanes that are buffered. So it's not just the bike lane, there's also an additional buffer to that within the 24-meter right-of-way. And then on one side of the road, there will be essentially a wider sidewalk, but we call it a multi-use trail that is separated from vehicular traffic by the barrier curb.
I thank you very much for that. Thanks.
If I may add, with the amendment, we do have to change the second recommendation for public commenting to start on February 19th in order to amend the public notice in time for the ad process.
Alrighty then. You've got a lot of work ahead of you tonight. There's many questions. Councillor Adams, Councillor Knoll, Councillor DeMoff, Councillor Hutchins. Anyone else? That'll get you going.
Okay.
Councillor Adams.
Would you mind going to your next steps page?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for laying out the policy amendment component of that clearly on this slide. So can you just confirm for me, so the final piece there on the financial policy, it being included within the development charge bylaw update and review means that it would then go into our 10-year capital forecast, assuming that it's within the 10-year period. Are you able to give us some indication as to whether it's likely to be early in a 20-year horizon, late in a 20-year horizon, midway? I mean, I know that it has to go through that whole process, but are we likely looking at the end of the 20-year horizon or somewhere in between? Any kind of sense?
Well, as you know, the development of the Burnham-Thorpe and actually North Oakville corridor is a long-term vision, almost a 20-year vision. So as part of that development will come the implementation of Burnham-Thorpe Road. So I do see it as a long-term. Exact timing, I would say 10 to 20 is more likely.
Okay, so it's into the
It's
outer
beyond,
end
yeah.
of that
That's
period.
right.
That's really what I'm trying to get. I'm not trying to peg you down to a particular year. I'm trying to get, so when the conversation comes up, I can say this is something that's farther out,
Yes.
not next year's development project, for example.
That's correct. And as I mentioned in the first slide, it is a long-term process. So there's a lot of work ahead of us after this, should council wish to approve, again, with the policy updates in order to move forward to that point of looking at it as part of
And
any
it's,
process.
of course, subject to changes in the rate of development in North Oakville. So if things sped up or things slowed down, we would be moving the
Absolutely.
project up or down, depending on that. Thank you very much for
You're
that
welcome.
information.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. From Councillor Adams' question, sounds like he plans on being budget chair for quite a long time. Actually, he touched on most of my questions regarding timing. I was curious what the anticipated timing was for what you saw in your crystal ball in terms of what the phasing looks like and such for when we might actually see something like this come to pass. So to be clear then, there's none of the groundwork or the infrastructure will take place until such a point as the development warrants it in that area, correct? We're not going to be looking at, like Oak Park Boulevard, when it was originally developed, was developed in this big field and there was nothing around it at all for probably 10 years later. Is that the case? We'll wait until such a point as there's development need in the...
Absolutely. It's to, the implementation, like at the earliest, would come with development applications along this corridor.
Right, which are at minimum at 10 years away, I would imagine at this point. Would that be accurate or?
planning. Pardon? 10 years?
There are a number of active applications right in the section around 6th line at this point in time that we'd be dealing with in the next short while, which means that we could time whatever happens with Burnham Thorpe with those applications.
Right, so are there applications north of Burnham Thorpe on 6th line, or just the ones we're dealing with right now below Burnham Thorpe?
You actually have two, as a confidential report, you have two applications, the Star Oak application and the MGO application, which are right along 6th line and Burnham Thorpe
But-
on your agenda tonight.
I guess I missed that. Is it north of Burnham Thorpe?
Yes, the
Wow,
Star Oak
okay.
application is to the north.
The four agendas that got me confused. I have to have a close look at that before we get into that. When you were, during this process, was there consideration given to the connections and the potential opportunities that exist along the transit corridor, along the 407? Because that's something long-term that Metrolinx, I guess, in the province are considering
In terms of a
development.
vehicular connection to Highway 407?
Public transit.
A transit corridor?
Because there's the transit corridor that is anticipated at some point in the future along the 407. So was there any consideration given to connectivity to that, to bring that public transit, I guess, connectivity into that area?
Essentially, no. What we did look at is the corridor as it has been identified through the North Oakville Secondary Plan, and really to establish the right-of-way and the character and the facilities within that. Any connections to adjacent roadways were not considered as part of the study.
The detailed design process, when will that start?
Again, it's a long-term process. We have to establish, first get ownership, update our official plan policies, and try and determine the financial component of that prior to the detailed design process. And as we mentioned, it is a long-term process.
So that will
I
happen,
see.
that'll happen post the acquisition of capital, is that correct?
It could happen in parallel, but we
Right.
do have to establish all of those policy updates. Timing-wise, in terms of detailed design, it would be 1 or 2 years prior to construction, which again, at the earliest, not with development, would be at the 10 to 20-year mark.
So if one of the residents were to ask you the question tomorrow, how long, like the existing residents that have some of these large lots, and a number of our constituents are still there and maintain their large, former rural properties and farms and such, what would you tell them in terms of what their expectations should be in terms of when they need to be looking at, the substantive changes to this community?
In terms of timing, we, again, are trying to establish a lot of this through the development application process, which, as you know, is
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing, but it's also, it's not immediate. It's in phase and over a 20-year period. So to see the corridor in its entirety would take, up to the 20 years at the earliest, I would say.
Okay. I mean, this has been a moving target since I came to council. I mean,
Absolutely.
This is one of the first issues that Councillor Elgar and I and the others that were around the table at the time were dealing with OPA 198 was that whole issue of,
Exactly.
how do you do all this and still maintain, the community until that point? Because there's a lot of folks there that were here 14 years ago that said, I want to stay there as long as possible. And I guess they're still counting the days that they can remain in their community. So before development becomes too substantial for them to maintain their properties. I guess that's all. I thanks for the answers to Councillor Elgar, or to Councillor Adams's questions regarding the timing, because that actually brought me quite a bit of relief for today, because I was a little apprehensive about how quickly we'd be seeing this coming forward. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Demoff.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Lynn, and thanks to my colleague, Councillor Elgar, for all his work. I think a multi-use trail addition is something that's really beneficial for this. Can you go back to the map you had that had the road in purple, Burnham Thorpe Road in purple?
Study area?
That one. So the multi-use trail is going to be on the purple sections, correct?
Yes, correct.
So what happens in the gray section of the William Allen Parkway?
Actually, if you bear with me,
William
I
Halton, sorry.
foresaw this question coming at some point. this evening. So what you have excuse me.
Almost.
So what you have before you is the North Oakville Trails Plan. The area that we're looking at as part of this study is this blue area, which, as you can see, is to be determined as part of this study, which is going to be the buffered bike lanes and now the addition of the multi-use trail on one side. The other area is over here, which is the west section, which is going to have, again, the two buffered bike lanes. The areas that are going to have multi-use trail in addition to the Burnham Thorpe Road corridor is along William Halton Parkway, which is labeled here New Burnham Thorpe, but we know that's not the new name, along here and also up Nayagawa. So those are the other corridors that have a multi-use trail in proximity to this Burnham Thorpe Road.
So you've answered the question that the multi-use trail then will go from one end of Oakville straight to the end of Burnham Thorpe then. So it'll be a full connection there.
There will be with a network, yes. There will be a full network from essentially Bronny Road along William Halton Parkway, and then the users could continue along William Halton Parkway to either to the north, continuing on that roadway, or continue along the new Burnham, or the Burnham Thorpe corridor.
Okay. But they're providing just a multi-use trail, not an on-road bike lane, is that right?
The
William Halton Parkway?
I believe it's both.
Or has it got both?
Um,
It just says regional bicycle facility, so I'm just not.
multi-use trail.
But no on-road bike lane?
Yeah.
Okay. And then my only other question had to do where the picture where you had off-peak, there's a section that's going to have off-peak parking. Where is the parking in your pretty picture? So, not that one. So where physically is the parking going?
So through the during the peak periods, we will have 4 lanes of traffic in order to accommodate the traffic being generated in the core sections. The off-peak parking is going to be on these 2 lanes. So it transitions from 2 lanes in the off-peak period to 4 lanes in the peak period.
Okay, so the bike lane is going to be between it will be the passenger side door that would be opening into the bike lane, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Damoff asked a lot of my questions here. I was confused as why in the core section the bike lane seems to be protected, with the people parking on the offshore, whilst on all the other sections the bike lane isn't protected. Why wouldn't we do the same things everywhere and protect the bike lane, put it on the inside so the passenger door?
Well, through the other corridors, we have the amount of traffic being generated is much different, is a lot lower. So to put in the bike lanes, so let's just put that up here, and to provide for on-street parking within those sections, where feasible, again, looking at vegetation along that corridor, and if there's any significant trees or utilities that have to be within that corridor is why the location is where it is. But again, in order to be respectful of the 24 meters and trying to minimize a wide corridor throughout here is why we have proposed the off-peak parking within that same 24-meter corridor along Burnham Thorpe Road.
Yes, but a bicycle lane, which is protected, obviously is a lot safer than one that is out in the traffic. So if you're putting it in and this is a new road, why not design it in to be safe for the bicyclists? I mean, you can just jiggle around the space.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Hutchins, the normal location anywhere we have parked vehicles in town is to put the bike lane on the driver's side of the vehicle. With the addition of the off-peak parking, though, we have no choice but to put the bike lane to the right of the vehicle or on the passenger side. These are lay-by parking spaces for the most part. With the buffered width of the bike lane, there would be sufficient room to open the door.
I still think that since we're designing new here, why can't we start designing bike lanes that are safe, so that they are off the road, so that they are protected? I mean, you're just moving around
these are
the
safe
space.
bike lanes, Councillor Hutchins. We wouldn't be recommending anything that wasn't safe.
All right, then. Madam Clerk, I understand we have at least one registered delegation. Would you call the delegations?
Yes, we have Karen Brock, again, from Oakville Green, here to speak to this item.
Ms. Brock, encore. Council looks forward to your information.
My toys set up here. Yes, my name is Karen Brock, and is this on? Okay. My name's Karen Brock, and I'm representing Oakville Green Conservation Association once again. Oakville Green was involved in the two stakeholder meetings, or at least I attended two of the stakeholder meetings, so it's always nice to be invited to those. One of them was in August, and we were hoping for pina coladas, but it didn't happen. So anyway, it's interesting, it's exciting to be a part of this, but I think it's also frustrating because I think we all understand how dramatically our town is going to be changing in 20 years. So although it's good to anticipate, I think there are still some things that when it comes down to the fine tuning, we have to be very careful of. I unfortunately couldn't find a whole lot online for the agenda items tonight, but as fortune would have it, I did come across this rather fat book down by the front door, which I will return, I promise, even though I've scritched in the edges. But I did want to point out that there is a section which is Appendix D, I believe, which is the Urban Forestry Report. So I'm sort of going on the fly here just because I didn't have a chance to look at it ahead of time. I am happy to see that there is an inventory of 40 significant trees in very good condition. And I do want to point out that of the 40, 38 are very large Carolinian native trees. So it's fabulous. So bur oaks, white pines, hackberries, all the ones that we're trying to encourage the town to plant now. And I think they've survived this long. I think they'll continue to survive. I'm also happy to see that there does appear to be, on page 6 of the staff report, states that the North Oakville East Secondary Plan notes that design standards will respect the existing character of the road and its abutting uses, to which may include unique approaches to matters such as grading and preservation of vegetation along routes. And I think we've heard this and experienced the frustration when new roads go in or new developments go in, everything is sort of mowed right to the walls. And I sure hope that we can see some unique approaches. And I feel hopeful by just the title, the Burnhamthorpe Character Study. And I think we hear more and more about the importance of the natural heritage, which I think adds value to our community. Also, I did want to point out that, and I'm very happy to see that on page 9 of the staff report, that it says there are opportunities within limited sections of Burnhamthorpe Road where at the detailed design stage, staff can explore options to preserve existing trees within the right-of-way. Some existing trees could be incorporated within the design to shade pedestrians. Hooray. under a canopy that serves to symbolize and celebrate the history of this roadway. So I think I'd like to see that this is happening differently. And certainly I live very close to 6th Line in Upper Middle, and that road was widened 25 years ago, and I invite you all to walk by there now, and it still looks pretty desolate. So I hope that this could change. How am I doing? I'm also happy to see in this urban forestry report that the trees, native trees found to be in good condition, which, as you know, are very many, would be preserved and incorporated into the road design. So that said, you know, it was good to be a part of the study, but I felt a lot of frustration because we were looking at a lot of mock-ups and a lot of designs, but what I wanted to see was what does it look like now? And obviously, along that whole road, it's very rural, and there's no doubt about it that we're expected that that's going to change. But I did want to specifically address the western portion, that little strip at the end, Lynn. I don't know whether you can pull that up. Oops. That's not it.
I didn't press anything, I swear. Does that help, Karen?
It's not quite the diagram that I'm looking for. I'll continue anyway, just as you're speaking to that. I did want to point out that that western section is particularly well treed right now. Also, Burnhamthorpe is going to dead end, which I think is pretty obvious. That road is going to dead end at 16 Mile Valley. Even though there is some residential development expected there, I'm looking at this area as probably the most hopeful area where we can preserve a lot of the very large trees, especially along the roadway. But I think it's also important to note that Glen Orkey sort of wraps around the top of that residential area in that western portion and continues in quite a wide band along the western edge. And there's also a very significant natural heritage link just west of Neagawa Boulevard. So it's a pretty important wide connection just to connect wildlife north and south. But I'm hoping that, as I say, I actually mentioned that I was frustrated with the lack of pictures of the western section. So I've got some here, if I can put it on this. That's as close as we can get, is it? Great. This is on Burnhamthorpe Road, looking west, just west of Neagawa. So I'm not sure whether it's included. There are a large row of trees here you see on my right. I'm not sure that it's actually included in the urban forest inventory. But you can see how large, actually maybe if the room was darkened a bit, you could see how wide those trees are at the base. The good news is that it appears that the right-of-way is going to be minimal here in that it's 22 meters, but I think I have to be careful what I wish for because I am concerned that if we do make this right-of-way 22 meters, that it's going to affect these large oak trees. So when it gets down to that detailed design stage, and I hear a lot of the cyclists and pedestrians, especially cyclists, who gets frustrated with the lack of continuity. So I'm just concerned, though, that by having continuity for sidewalks, that we're going to have to get a little more creative. So when push comes to shove, when we come down to the detailed design, is there an opportunity, like there is in Ward 4, where you can have the sidewalk on one side and a multi-use trail or a bike lane on the other in order to preserve those two trees? So in which case, does that mean that you do need a 24-meter right-of-way in order to allow the cycleway or the sidewalk, whichever is most appropriate, on the north side of those large oaks? So that would be my only word of caution in looking at that. And I'm happy to see that it looks as if the report does recommend that, I guess I'm down to 1 minute, that the sidewalk can curve around some of the base of the trees. And I'm suggesting that that might even be possible with the roadway in some cases too, where, as you can see, there's a large portion of forest. This is actually looking eastward, some white pines, and yet across the road there isn't much. So if there's an opportunity to create an interesting small bend in the road, that might be optimal too. So anyway, thank you very much, and appreciate you listening to my concerns about the urban forest canopy, which I think will be of great benefit and add to the value of the homes that will eventually end up in that area.
Thank you very much for your many constructive comments. Questions? Councillor Knoll.
Not so much a question, but a question of the delegate, but a question of staff. The area that Mrs. Brock was showing us, I think that is probably the portion of the road that will become the William Halton Parkway, is it not?
As you see in the slide before you, there is a considerable portion of William Halton Parkway that is just west of Neagawa.
Right.
And then the actual Burnhamthorpe corridor that's as part of this study is actually it's west. It starts about 500 meters west of Fourth Line.
Yeah, because I think the area that Mrs. Brock was showing us was at Fourth Line. That's what it looked like. So I think it'd be important that those comments also be communicated with the regional staff as well,
yes,
because they'd be administering and managing the project for the Halton Parkway. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll look for a motion to receive. Sorry? Oh, we have another delegation. Madam Clerk.
No, not listed, but there might be.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
They may be out in the audience.
Are there other members of the public with information for council on this matter? Well, come on down. Please introduce yourself and share your information.
My name is Leon Hawes. I came totally unprepared, only wishing to just gather the information that's going on. I sat on the stakeholders committee for this at Lynn's invitation and have followed it through since, as far as I'm aware, inception in the spring of 2013. I've raised recently with the region, because I understand it's their jurisdiction, the concern of splitting the existing Burnhamthorpe Road into two pieces, one whole two halves held by the town, with a regional section in between the two. And to this end, I have not yet received from the region any response to my concerns, which is why are there two intersections on Burnhamthorpe Road? Now, I realise this is a technical question and it should have been addressed much earlier, but I had no understanding until relatively recently that, in fact, this whole transportation corridor has been handled by two different people. And my feeling is that presently it's a regional road. It's going to be a new regional road that intersects with it. Surely this design should in fact be coordinated by the present owner, which is presumably the region. And at that point, all these interface problems can be resolved. So that's a concern that I have. The other part of it is that I'm very pleased to see that the cyclists' needs for separation from traffic is being well looked after. I allude to Councillor Hutchins' concerned about having two different types of designs, and although Mr. Cozy and I are constantly in discussion with regard to cyclists and separation of cyclists from traffic. I do not necessarily agree with the idea that you can have on one section of the road a cyclist on the traffic side of a parked car, and on the other part of the road have the cyclist lane on the passenger side of a parked car. I sense that Councillor Hutchins has got a good point, and it's to make it consistent throughout. And is there any reason why it cannot be looked at? But that I realise is something for detailed design. But so my major point right now is it's a regional road now. It's going to be interfaced with a new regional road. Surely the region are responsible for pulling this thing together to make sure that it works, and then, if necessary, hand off. Then at that point, hand off back to the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. Sir, is another, yes? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Danny Costa. If it's possible to get clarification with applications for development, are we saying that infrastructure, like no infrastructure and no development are expected until 10 to 20 years? Or is there the possibility that there could be some development and some infrastructure before the 10 to 20 years?
Through you, Your Worship, as noted earlier, there are some development applications presently before staff and currently being circulated. In terms of timing, with those applications before staff, there is a possibility to see that development in the short term in terms of the area along 6th Line, and with that could be some infrastructure included along this corridor in order to service that development. But again, in terms of the construction and implementation of Burnham Thorpe Road, it is a longer term process.
I hope that's helpful. It sounded to me a little bit like maybe, maybe not. Councillor Demoff, do I see your hand?
I don't have a question for the gentleman who just spoke, but I do have a question for staff.
You have the floor.
Okay. Just going back to what Leon was asking about, I just want to clarify something because he said something about it being dealt with during detailed design. Is there going to be any opportunity to move those bike lines later, or the ship will sail once we've approved this tonight, will it not?
With respect to the location and number of lanes, or
no, not the
adjusting?
number, but in terms of whether or not it's on the door side or the passenger side of a car that's parked. So I get the impression that once this is voted on tonight, that those bike lanes, the EA has been done under we're going to approve them being on bump out parking and the bike lanes being on the inside. You know what I'm asking.
Yes, I do. I mean, detailed design, there's always an opportunity to look at things. But I just caution you that when you have off-peak parking, it's difficult. You'd have to mark the lanes in a way that wouldn't be confusing the drivers and motorists, because that lane will be occupied by a vehicle as a fourth travel lane during parts of the day, and other parts of the day it'll be a parking lane. So how do you mark that? How do you not cause that confusion? We went through this whole exercise when we looked at the Midtown EA and how we would have potential off-peak parking on certain roads in the Midtown, and how we would actually implement cycle lanes that were either on the passenger side or on the driver's side. And in our thorough review of the situation with Mr. Clapham, our Sustainable Transportation Coordinator, the advice was not to put the cycle lane on the like the hybrid cycle lane that sort of disappears and comes back depending on the parking. So I would suggest to you that you are approving the cycle lanes to be how we're proposing them, but at detailed design, if for some reason we're not going to have off-peak parking, we could look at modifying the design at that time.
It wasn't so much the off-peak parking section, because I like that part. It's the other part. So is there an opportunity where you've got the bump out parking to be able to move those bike lanes if Is there a chance to discuss that at a later opportunity? So the off-peak
There
parking
would be.
plan is good.
There definitely would be, but if we're talking bump out parking, if we're talking lay-by parking or conventional parking, that'll be key as to where the bike lane resides.
Because it would be nice to just have a straight line with the bike lane in one, and I mean, the discussion of which one is better.
I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying. It all depends on whether it's lay-by parking or not. That's going to change the nature of the boulevard and, you know, what we were trying to accomplish with parking there.
Okay, but we could still have a discussion as we
sure
go.
can.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knoll.
Sorry, I don't want to exacerbate that point. I just want to be perfectly clear, though, because I want to make sure my understanding is correct of what we're approving here. I think the answer was reasonably clear, but I just want to be certain. We're not approving the fine-grained detail of this plan. That is detailed design work, right? So this discussion about passenger side, driver side, et cetera, all that stuff is yet to be worked out, correct?
Well, mostly correct, Councillor. The EA does propose certain types of bike lanes, one side or the other, but you're correct in your first part where you said you're approving an EA which says there's so many lanes, the corridor width is this much, there's a sidewalk, there's a multi-use path. This is what the features will include.
Right.
Detailed design will hash out all the rest of it.
That's what I understood. So there's plenty of time to work this and even change smaller details of this plan, so we don't have to make finite decisions tonight. Correct.
Maybe as much as 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, that's right. Second point is on this issue of the phasing of development, the timing of development of there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no allocation currently for development in that area, is there? We don't have any excess. That plan is still in process, correct?
Through your worship to the councillor, the two applications, the MGO and the Star Oak that you're dealing with in another report do have allocation under the current program.
Okay. Yeah, but they're talking 6 line though. So 6 line has allocation? Oh, wow, okay. I certainly missed that. Thank you.
All right. Who wants to move receipt of the presentation?
I'll move.
Councillor Elgar? Oh, Councillor Adams, you want to do something else?
But I just want to include recommendation 3 also, okay, so that everybody's clear on that.
You said receipt, we're not moving receipt, we're
Moving
moving approval.
Thank you, Councillor.
So I think what's being moved is the staff recommendation with a third point relating to the multi-use path. Is that correct?
And also the amendment to the notice of completion
Yes.
to begin on February 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Is this still moved by you?
Well, I thought it was.
All right.
Is there somebody different? But, because
Discussion?
you have
All
it
in
written up,
favor?
so you could put it,
Yes.
okay.
Opposed? Opposed? Barely. Good news, it carried. That was a first. Good news, it carried. Council, can I ask your attention for confidential discussion item C3? Are you prepared to deal with this with a motion in public, or do you need to go into camera? Councillor Knoll? Thank you, Councillor Knoll. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that carries. All right, now we come to the advisory committee minutes, and that's in the addendum. And we have a number of recommendations pertaining to items 6A, B, and C, and the remainder of the minutes to be received. Councillor Dudek moves. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. A motion to rise and report to council. Councillor Grant, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1 and 2, confidential consent items C1 and C2, public hearing item 3, discussion items 4, 5, and 6, confidential discussion item C3, and advisory committee minutes item 7, as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for the report is in order. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and the report is adopted. Council, is there new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Councillor Duddick.
Your worship, I'd just like to take this opportunity to congratulate my ward mate on the recent recipient of the Paul Harris Award, and I understand there were several others, but I would ask members of council to join with me in congratulating her.
Hear, hear. Congratulations, Councillor DeMoff. That being said, a mover and seconder for the bylaws would be in order. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Elgar. This is authority for the bylaws as listed in the agenda. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and the bylaws are adopted. That completes our agenda. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been great working with you. We are adjourned.